Feuchamaich, Olde Scot the Celtic podcast. Kimmer ha hula dunya. How is everybody? On today's show in Feuchamaich, Beagan, Gaidhlig, that's Let's Try a Little Gaidhlig. We're going to do the new series, Traveling Gaidhlig, and we're going to be talking about where are you from? It's a question that's always asked. In Celtic history today, in this story, you thought the Glencoe massacre was bad. Wait until you hear this story. Now, in everyday Celtic ways, we got a story I wrote called Naimh's Kelpie. And we'll hear music from Alison Helzer, Beyond the Pale, Cara Dillon, Celtic Women, and Mary Jane Lamond. As always, it's a wee bit of Irish trivia to test your knowledge to start us off. Although St. Patrick is acknowledged as a saint, no pope has ever canonized him. Is that true or false? Alright. Check out the Olde Scot Facebook group where you can be a part of the Celtic culture. And keep an eye out for the Celtic Badass, Celtic Music Spotlight, Learn a Gaelic Song, Dark Celtic History, and the new Celtic radio videos. Feuchamaich, let's kick this thing off. Alright, that was Gaidhlig, The White Love of My Heart by Alison Helzer. And now it's time for Feuchamaich, Beagan, Gaidhlig. Let's try a little Gaidhlig. I'm not an authority on the Gaelic language, I just love learning it. I struggle like everybody else. What I teach comes, though, from well-respected Gaelic teachers. So I hope you find it interesting, informative, and fun. I always display on the screen what I'm discussing, so you can follow along. Now, these traveling Gaelic segments of Feuchamaich, Beagan, Gaidhlig concentrate on the words and phrases that come in handy while traveling in Gaelic-speaking parts of the world. You know, if you're into the language and you want to speak a little bit, these are the things you may need. Because Gaelic-speaking parts of the world mostly are bilingual. And learning these things just help you recognize the words and phrases when you see them or hear them. Now, going through a beginner's course will help you along the way. And we have a beginner's course on our Facebook group. Feel free to download it. And if you want to hear them, go to the Olde Scot YouTube channel. And the weekly podcast, we started doing them week to week on May 15th. So there you go. All right, where are you from? Now, you may be asked one of these questions. Catcha Shiva Furlach. Where are you living? Another question. Avail Shiva Lewis. Are you from Lewis? And you need to be ready with that reply. Chanil Mia Lewis. Hamia Dunagin. I'm not from Lewis. I'm from Edinburgh. Oh, hey. Now, you'll hear that a lot because it's used extensively. It's much like Americans say or ah. Oh, hey. Catcha Avail Shiva Furlach. Anan Dunagin. Where are you living in Edinburgh? Chanil Gachik Akit Rish Stocker. So none of your business, Stocker. Now, you're going to need some geography to know a little bit of the words of geography. Lewis, or Lewis Sock, Lewis person, and Lewis Sek, Lewis people. Mul, Muluk, Mul person, or Mul, Mulik, Mul people. Notice how the spelling changes between the singular and the plural. All right. Gaeltach, the Highlands, and Chilan Skianok, the Isle of Skye. And Chilan, it means the Isle of, but it's not unpopular just to hear people say Skye or Lewis. So, Ben Nafula, Ben Becula, Nahera, Harris, Lewis, Uist, Uistatua, no, Uistajes. That's North Uist or South Uist. Then you have Overyan, Aberdeen, Dunedin, which is Edinburgh, Inverness, Glasgow, Alba, Scotland, Arian, Ireland, Anhumri, Wales, Sassen, England, Ron Europa, Europe, America, now Station Onika, the United States. All right. I hope you liked Traveling Gaelic on Feuchamaich Beagan Gaelic today.
Undertaker sighs, the lonesome organ grinder cries, the silver saxophones say I should refuse you. Cracked bells with washed out horns blow into my face with scorn. It's not that way, I wasn't born to lose you. Honey, I want you, I want you, I want you so bad. Honey, I want you. Well, your dancing child in his Chinese suit, I spoke to him, I took his flute, I wasn't very cute to him. Now was I? Oh, but I did it because he lied, because he took you for a ride, and because time was on his side, and because honey, I want you, I want you, I want you so bad. Honey, I want you. Well, now all my fathers, they've gone down. True love, I've been without it. And all their daughters put me down, cause I don't think about it. When I return to my queen of spades and talk with my chambermaid maid, she knows that I am not afraid to look at her. Oh, she is good to me, there is nothing she doesn't see. She knows where I'd like to be, but it don't matter. Honey, I want you, I want you, I want you so bad. honey, I want you. Well, now my daughters, they've gone down. True love, I've been without it. And all their daughters put me down, 'cause I don't think about it. Well, I'll return to my queen of spades and talk with my chambermaid. She knows that I am not afraid to look at her. Oh, she is good to me. There is nothing she doesn't see. She knows where I'd like to be, but it don't matter. Honey, I want you. I want you. I want you so bad. Honey, I want you. I want you. I want you so bad. Oh, honey, I want you. Oh, I want you. I want you so bad.
Alright, that was I Want You by Beyond the Pale. And today on Celtic History, you just thought the Glencoe massacre was bad. Wait till you hear this story. In 1642, the start of the English War, Covenanter Campbell soldiers of the Argyll's Foot were encouraged by their commanding officer, Sir Duncan Campbell of Auchenbreck, to kill the local Catholic MacDonalds on the island of Rathlin just off the northeast coast of Northern Ireland. Now, these MacDonalds were relatives of their arch clan enemy in the Scottish Highlands, Clan MacDonald. In an effort to purge the island of what they perceived as a threat, the Campbell soldiers gathered by force all of the MacDonald women and children. They would have probably gathered everybody, but most of the men were overseas fighting in the English Civil War, on both sides. They proceeded to throw the women and children over a 100-foot cliff to their deaths on the rocks below. Then, to make matters worse, they attempted to hide the shame of their immoral deeds. The number of the victims of this massacre has been put as high as 3,000, but at the time, nobody even bothered to count. In August of 1643, the Scottish government and English Parliament signed a solemn league and covenant resulting in Scotland entering the war against King Charles I. In response, the king appointed James Graham, Marquis of Montrose, as Captain General of Royalist forces in Scotland. Although he had fought as a Covenanter commander during the Bishops' War, he had opposed the subsequent power of the Presbyterian leadership under Archibald Campbell, Marquis of Argyll. Now, Montrose effectively mobilized the Highland forces, many of whom were opposed to Campbell, and achieved a number of rapid successes, including victory at the Battle of Tippermoor on the 1st of September 1644, and an assault on Aberdeen in October. Now, during late 1644 to early 1645, Montrose waged a war of attrition against the heartlands of Archibald Campbell, Marquis of Argyll, culminating in an attack on Inverary, seat of the Campbells, on the 14th of January 1645. Montrose then moved his forces to Kilcumin, now named Fort Augustus, and intended to march northeast along the Great Glens towards Inverness, where Covenanter forces were mustering. However, he then became aware of a second Covenanter army at Inverloch, headed by Argyll himself. An advance north was inconceivable with such a force on his back, and therefore he resolved to engage. The Covenanter forces consisted of men drawn from Campbell's territories within Argyll, and also veteran troops drawn from the Scottish army fighting in England, most of whom were Lowlanders. The Royalists had a corps of Highlanders, but their numbers were being depleted as many returned home laden with the loot that they had acquired from the raided Campbell territories. However, Montrose also had a large contingent of Irish, headed by General Alistair MacCulloch. Now, if you've seen any of my badass Celtic Badass videos, you know all about Alistair MacCulloch. Now, he had joined with the Royalist forces in November 1644. The Great Glen that runs between Inverness and Fort William, Inverlochy, has always been a main communication artery through the otherwise impenetrable Highland Massif. Montrose was well aware that any advance along the glen would have alerted Argyll to his presence. So he diverted his men from the traditional routes and moved towards Inverlochy through the foothills of Ben Nevis, marching 30 miles in just 36 hours. Over frozen and mountainous terrain, his forces descended down the slopes of Ben Nevis just before dawn on the 2nd of February 1645. Now, although the Covenanters were aware a small Royalist force was in the area, they had no idea it was Montrose's entire army and were caught entirely by surprise. Panic ensued, and Argyll himself, who was suffering from a dislocated shoulder, fled to his galley, leaving Duncan Campbell of Auchenbreck to command the army. Now, he hastily deployed his men in a line extending southeast from Inverlochy Castle and garrisoned the old structure with 200 musketeers to anchor his left flank. Montrose extended his line to match, but his reduced numbers meant his ranks were just 2 men deep. Initial skirmishes between the two forces commenced. Montrose attacked before dawn. The Royalists fired a single volley and then charged into hand-to-hand combat. The Highland charge was developed by Alistair MacCulloch, though, so these guys were well versed in this. This furious assault caused a strategic shock that resulted in the lowlanders on both flanks breaking. A detachment attempted to make for the safety of Inverlochy Castle, but their retreat was intercepted by the Royalist cavalry under Sir Thomas Ogilvie, who received a fatal wound during his encounter. Now, despite seeing their flanks collapse and now being surrounded, the Covenanter center held their ground. Doubtless, they knew what fate awaited them if they surrendered to their arch-enemy's Clan Donald. Fierce fighting ensued, which the Covenanter commander Duncan Campbell was captured. The Covenanters were eventually overwhelmed and broke, with mass slaughter ensuing. The death toll might have been as high as 1,500, with the Covenanter army scattered. The small force of musketeers garrisoned Inverlochy Castle surrendered to Montrose, and Argyll slipped away to sea in his galley. One prisoner, though, who would receive no mercy was Duncan Campbell, Lord Auchenbreck, the functional commander of the Covenanters that day. Auchenbreck had ravaged the lands of Alistair MacCulloch's Irish cousins in Antrim and on Rathlin Island, and committed many atrocities that had been known to Alistair MacCulloch. As commander in the Scottish army in Ireland, Alistair felt regret and anger at the atrocities that he heard committed, yet he was unable to give a proper response at the time. Campbell had also plotted to assassinate Alistair a few times when Alistair tried to reconcile with his Scottish army following the great defeat at Glencoe. However, now Alistair had Auchenbreck, so he had the enemy of his people brought before him. Alistair offered Auchenbreck 2 choices: to be made longer, meaning hanged, or made shorter, meaning decapitated. Auchenbreck replied, Dachu gun un rochen, which roughly translated as 2 worse alternatives without a choice. At this point, having grown tired of merely being in this evil man's presence, Alistair swung his 2-handed sword and lopped off the top of Auchenbreck's head, above the ears, like a top of a soft-boiled egg. Alistair had finally got the revenge for the people of the island of Rathlin, and all the atrocities that this man had committed along the way. This may have been just something that spurred on the Campbells to commit the atrocity that they did later on, 50 years later, in Glencoe.
Dear thoughts are in my mind, and my soul, its soul's enchanted, as I hear the sweet lark sing in the clear air of the day. for a tender beaming smile to my hope has been granted, and tomorrow he shall hear all my fond heart longs to say. I will tell him all my love, all my soul's pure adoration, and I know he will hear my voice, and he will not answer me nay. It's this that gives my soul all its joyous elation, as I hear the sweet lark sing in the clear air of the day. It's this that gives my soul all its joyous elation, as I hear the sweet lark sing in the clear air of the day.
Alright, that was Lark in the Clear Air by Cara Dillon. And now it's time for Everyday Celtic Ways. Now, today's going to be a story that I'd written called Naimh's Kelpie. It's a, quick flash fiction. A Kelpie in Celtic mythology of Scotland was originally a name given to a water horse. Now, this supernatural entity could be found in the lochs and rivers of Scotland, and also has a place in Irish, Welsh, Manx, and in the Orkney and Shetland Island folklore. The description of their appearance can vary in different tales. Sometimes it's white, smooth, cold skin, or black and gray. Kelpie in some stories are described as shapeshifters. They are able to transfer themselves into beautiful women who can lure men and trap them. However, the Kelpie does not always take a female form. They are also described as posing a particular danger to children when in the shape of a horse, because they attract their victims to ride them, and then they take them under the water and they eat them. In Orkney, they are known as the Nuggle, and in the Shetland Islands, the water horse is known as the Siúpadlin. In Wales, it's Shefflin-Dwyer, and Manx, it's known as Cabal Ushti. It's also associated with other creatures of streams and rivers called the Glashtin. So the Kelpie or the water horse legend is universal in Celtic world. However, once the story was different. On a dreary, misty day in the coastal town of Larne on the Isle of Man, a young Scottish warrior stands tall at the bow of the ship that he has chartered to bring him to this land. An equally tall Manx gentleman helps mooring the ship on the dock as it drifts close. He catches the tether as it is thrown to him, but he doesn't shift his eye. He's unable or unwilling to turn his gaze from the very dangerous-looking warrior. Now, after the ship is tied down and the warrior has placed foot upon the soil of man, Eric, the Manx gentleman, welcomes the warrior to his land, with a question, though, that lingers with both men. My daughter is in the care of a healer named Lingerton. She was on a ship and had taken ill upon their voyage, and she was left here in their care, since it was deemed she might not survive the remainder of the trip, the warrior explained. By the way, I'm Alistair Doom MacDonald of Skye. Well, welcome, MacDonald. I'm Eric Lingerton. Your daughter Naimh has been the joy of my life these past few weeks. She was only sick for a couple days and made a miraculous recovery. On death's door she was for sure, though, Eric answered him. As the two men turned to leave the dock, young Naimh come running down the hill, eager, jumping over a stack of wood and bounding into her father's arm, kissing him on the cheek as hard as she could. Hello, father. Well, hello, he replied. I can't wait to get home and see mother, she explains. as she picks up her small travel bag and sets it gently into the ship. She jumps from her father's arms and begins to board the ship at the surprise and, frustration of the few shipmen who were expecting at least a day's rest before returning. "I thought we'd stay," he says. "Hamiageria dol Ansnyaki," she says in Gaelic to her father, with a wink of her eye and a suggestive leer. MacDonald looks around and doesn't see any real threat to him and his party. However, even though Naimh is young, she is not foolish, and would not act this way without cause. He reaches out a hand to Eric and thanks him for all his hospitality amidst his passive insistence that MacDonald stay at least one night. MacDonald boards the ship. "We must be going, Lingerton. Her mother is as eager to see her as she is to be home. We men are just pawns at the ready for our beloved womenfolk, eh?" he says as he reaches down and untethers the ship from the dock and motions for his crew to make way. As the medium-sized galley drifts away from the dock, turns and catches the breeze in its sails that will take it from this land, MacDonald and his daughter Naimh watch as the seemingly friendly people upon the dock get smaller and smaller in their view. Once the mainsail has caught in a strong breeze, MacDonald turns an inquisitive eye towards his daughter. "Explain." "In private, father, please," she begs. Now he is worried. What has happened to his daughter that is unknown to him? Could it be something that might cause him to turn and lay waste to this sleepy little town on that dreary little island? Together they walk swiftly to the aft of the ship and enter a small cabin, the captain's cabin. Once inside, Naimh sits down and readies herself to tell her story, while their father pours himself a dram of whiskey before sitting down to listen. "All right, begin," he demands. "Well, I was dreadfully sick, father, and it's true that I would have not made it home. So leaving me on the island was the best thing for me," she begins. "I'm waiting to hear why I was forced to be so rude and leave so quickly, Naimh," he demands. "I'm getting to it. It's just so horrible that I hate to even think upon it. However, father, I must for your sake and the sake of your crew. You see, father, the captain of the ship really had no other choice than to leave me here. It isn't his fault at all, but you see, on the second night I was here, Mrs. Lingerton took me for a stroll to a nearby stream where she said the warm waters would heal me, and as she was helping me sit in the smooth rocks along the spring's edge, a giant water horse, a Kelpie, rose up menacing before me. Its eyes glowed in the moonlight. Mrs. Lingerton wasn't scared at all, though. She paid the Kelpie a single gold coin, and it allowed me upon its back. I was fearful as well, because I know the stories, but I was too weak to even fight. The Kelpie swam under me and put me on its back and took me into the deep part of the spring." "Oh my God, whatever happened, young'un?" he demands on the edge of his seat. "The Kelpie, it took me into the spring and dunked me in the healing waters over and over again until I was completely healed. Then she returned me to Mrs. Lingerton, and it returned to its watery prison. You see, the Lingertons had tricked the Kelpie into this spring and was using it to make themselves known as healers. Now I wondered why the Kelpie would help them the way it does, so I crept out the next night after I was feeling better and visited the beast once again." "By yourself? Whatever for?" he questions. "You see, father, the Kelpie appeared to me and told me that the Lingertons had captured its baby and was making it do these things so no harm would come to the baby. But later I found out that harm did come to the baby. People aren't good caretakers of mystical creatures, you see, and it died quickly. But the Kelpie didn't know this, so after I told it of what I knew, we hatched a plan, and last night I went to the Kelpie and we went to where they had kept her baby. They hadn't even cared for its body, hence its death, father. The Kelpie wanted to kill all in the village and destroy everything that very instant. But I was able to calm the giant beast. I knew that I must make it to safety before she exacted her revenge. Since I was its savior and wished it no harm, she agreed. Just then the door of the cabin burst open and a crew member came rushing in. "Sir, you have to see this," he says before retreating from the cabin. MacDonald, with Naimh in tow, make their way to the deck where they can see the smoke billowing from the town of Larne they had just left. Should we return, sir, to offer assistance? The crewman asked. No. Stay your course, MacDonald orders. Too many puzzled, worried eyes. Firmly he grasps his daughter armed and hurries back into the cabin. As soon as the door has closed behind him, he turns to her and demands the remainder of the story with a single word. Now. I've been entrusted with a sacred task, Father, she says as she picks up her bag and opens it in front of him. It's a Kelpie egg, Father. He looks into the bag, and sitting gently on a pile of gold coins is a black egg with gray streaks crisscrossing it. He watches as it wiggles from time to time. Oh, Naimh, what have you done? He asks. I've made a vow to lay this egg at the edge of the loch back home and to tell of its parents when it comes of age. You see, the first contact is what determines whether a Kelpie is good or bad. What's with the gold? He asks, picking up one of the coins to examine it. A gift to ensure the deed gets done, for the Kelpie believes it will perish, seeking the vengeance it is owed, the vengeance it's getting right now. And if it doesn't, he replies, our loch will have 2 Kelpies then, but they will be good. We cannot tell anyone, you know, he replies, still running his fingers through the bag of gold coins. Of course, Father, Naimh replies, smiling. The end.
Na kringst na glien bewaarje leens dat kreegjes kleine vrije men drik fashion remar en beans a gommen green a pialijn gaan ja latjen ju van grains ken perlum heen wie tafel na brei na hein ik mes na zon een feitje vriend na galig na kringst na glien bewaarje leens dat kreegjes kleine vrije men drie fashion remar en beans a gommen green a pialijn. Do vroeg en garams en feitjes breed, do gwach en regen arif, maar oog around en service ram a riege pound en arfjan, de gringst na glien bewaarje lijn, dat grijgjes green a vrije, men drie fashion remar en beans a gommen green a pialijn. Gur pouchgach woer a fasket woer mat ni chwri faian Spikion an ian gefaun vergien Nur hikke grian le falchan De grings na glien bewoiche lein Dat gringjes glien a vrije Man drik fashion remar en beans a gommen green a pialijn Bis true in verduske guana bruchag mak maragen Bi crow is kurig patrim fut in fonen ut en aarde Na grings na glein bewaarje lein Zat gringjes glein a vrije Man drik fashion remar en beans a gommen green a pialijn Gempinum kjad na hainje var Chi fauwe van gwar na haljach Wat fysiek was het chias le vloeim Gaat door mi poot en vrije Na grings na glein bewaarje lein Zat gringjes glein a vrije Man drik fashion remar en beans a gommen green a pialijn Na grings na glein bewaarje lein Zat gringjes glein a vrije Man drik fashion remar en beans a gommen green a pialijn
Alright, that was Ambre, The Braes by Mary Jane Lamond. Top Love Heritage. And that's it for the podcast today, but before I let you go, the trivia question answer. Although St. Patrick is acknowledged as a saint, no pope has ever canonized him. True or false? Well, it's true. Despite being revered within the Catholic Church and worldwide, St. Patrick is not an official saint. However, Pope John Paul once said, when asked if the Church should make it official, that there's nothing we can do to add to his greatness. If Patrick is not a saint in God's eyes, I fear for us all. Alright, remember to check out my YouTube channel, Ye Olde Scot. It's got Celtic Badass, Celtic Music Spotlight, Celtic Podcast, Speaking Our Language, Learn a Gaelic Song, Dark Celtic History, and the new Celtic Music Radio videos. And my Facebook group, Ye Olde Scot, where you can give me your insights and input on all things Celtic. Martian Leave and Drozda, bye for now, but I'm going to let you go with a song, A Fond Kiss by Celtic Women.
A fond kiss and then we sever. A farewell alas forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, wearing sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Who shall say that fortune grieves him while the star of hope she leaves him? Me no cheerful twinkle lights me,